L'ordre du jour appelle maintenant la présentation et la discussion du rapport sur la démocratie locale en Irlande, texte CPL 25.5 Prov, qui sera présenté par M. Andris Joslenis de Lettonie et par Mme Merita Yegeni Yildiz de Turquie. Ce rapport est accompagné d'un projet de recommandation qui fera l'objet d'un vote à l'issue de la discussion. Le débat sera ensuite suivi d'une allocution de M. Fergus O'Dowd, ministre d'État de la République d'Irlande, que je suis content de saluer, et qui répondra également aux questions écrites qui lui ont été adressées. Je donne tout d'abord la parole à nos deux rapporteurs. Monsieur Joslenis, vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Dear colleagues, I have very recently taken over the role of local rapporteur for Ireland. I am replacing our esteemed colleague Michael Cohen, who is unfortunately not with the Congress anymore. But I give me great pleasure to see him this week here, as his capacity and advisor to Minister Herrera of Malta. I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for all the work done on this report and recommendation. At the end of my presentation, I will give the floor to Merita Yevgeny Yildiz, who is a regional rapporteur who visited Ireland twice in the preparation of this report. She will present to you the details of the issues dealt with the recommendation. A word of thanks here also to Professor Yuri Nemets, consultant and member of the group of independent experts, who is not present here today. I thank him for this excellent work. I am also very glad that Minister O'Dowd is present today here for our debate and exchange views with us. I have read and reread the report and all the relevant materials of the report carefully, and I find a strict and good balance between the assessment of the current situation and what is to come if the government plan for reform goes through successfully. Colleagues, the report is based on the finding of 2 visits to Ireland. The first was in October 2012. Only 1 week after the first visit, the government published a policy paper on the action plan for local government reform in Ireland. This changes the rule of the game a little, if I may put it like that. So, the Congress delegation went to Dublin a second time on 3rd May 2030 in order to complete and update the report. During the first visit, the delegation visited Dublin, Cork, Meath County, Antrim between 3rd and 30 October. Meetings were held with authorities at central, county and local levels, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the National Association for the Municipal, County and Regional levels, and all the academic experts. During the second visit, the visit was limited to a discussion of the details of the action programme with representatives of the Association of Local and Regional Authorities and representatives from the Ministry, Environmental, Community and Local Governments. So, here is how we assess the situation. Ireland has made important change since the previous recommendation dating back to 2001, and the basic legal framework is now established for local and partly also for regional authorities. However, Ireland continues to have a heavily centralised public administration system. On the other hand, there is a clear will of the government part to move towards a more decentralised system. This is very positive, given that of the past similar reform efforts have failed. The action programme foresees a serious overhaul of the local government structure. It involves the abolition of the 18 town council, which will be replaced by municipal districts. This will result in the substantial reduction in the number of councillors, which gave rise to a lot of criticism which was concerned. On the other hand, however, if we have the merit of addressing an undemocratic situation whereby those living in the towns had 2 voids, one for town council, one for county council, while those living in rural areas had just only one voice. The reform also addresses recognized weaknesses, such as duplication, fragmentation, isolation, inconsistency and lack of powers and resources of local authorities. More competence will be devolved for local authorities. An important step forward is the introduction of new local properties tax, which also centrally collected. We give local authorities the discretion to increase or decrease the rate of tax, which affects from 1st January 2015 onwards. As for region, various interlocutors during the visit have declared that in Ireland people think locally or nationally, but not regionally. There are 8 NUTS 3 level regions which have no revenue generation power. They are weak and their mandate is very restricted. And there are 2 NUTS 2 level regions for EU structural fund purpose. According to the action plan, the number of regional authorities assemblies will be reduced to 3. This in part reflects the fact that the regional authorities have little or no direct powers and are not directly elected. We now also see how the action programme will be implemented. I would suggest the same sort of post-monitoring activity be scheduled for just after 2014 local election, when most of the change proposed by the plan will come into effect. This is in line with our revised resolution on post-monitoring and now an effective way to continue to dialogue with the government. Colleagues, I now leave the floor to Ms. Gildis, who will explain the issues to concern as a recommendation.
Effectivement, c'est Madame Yegeni Yildiz qui va prendre la suite pour 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Andres, for your explanations. Dear colleagues, it's my pleasure for me, in my capacity as a regional rapporteur, to present to you the details of the issues dealt with in our recommendations. Let me also begin by expressing my personal thanks to previous fellow rapporteur Michael Cohen, who is here as a visitor today, with whom we had a very fruitful collaboration. At the same time, I would like to thank Professor Juraj Nemec and co-rapporteur Sedef Can Kocak for their excellent job. I would like to briefly highlight some issues that are cause for concern in the local government system in Ireland. The first problem is that the constitutional protection of local self-government is rather weak and that the principle of subsidiarity is not properly reflected and guaranteed in the legislation. The subsidiarity principle can and should be better enshrined and protected in the law. The local governments do not manage a substantial share of public affairs. Their competences are limited and they are heavily dependent on the central government for their finances at the local and regional level. There seems to be a strong tendency to keep the guidance of local government affairs in central government hands. Consultations with local authorities and their associations are not regulated in a way to allow the latter to make an input into the proposed reform. The different associations are apparently finding it difficult to act together in defense of their interests. There is now an initiative to bring together the associations of municipalities and those of counties under one umbrella. This is very positive. The conditions of office of local elected representatives are insufficiently regulated by general legislation. For many councillors, it is difficult to reconcile their work and council duty, as it is very much the discretion of their employer which determines their availability. The administrative supervision of local authorities' activities by the central level remains disproportionate. Supervision and regulation of local authorities in Ireland is very strong and detailed. The plans to establish a new National Oversight Office possess the risk to further increase level of supervision. Finally, the equalisation mechanism is not transparent and the freedom of local governments to adopt budgets is severely limited in practice. The formula used in the past comprised some 800 parameters and has recently been abandoned in favor of an analysis on the basis of an administrative assessment of need and resources. Now, turning to the recommendations, we propose to ask the government to revise their legislation in order to ensure that the subsidiarity principle is better enshrined and protected in the law, because even if there are safeguards already in existence, a clear declaration in the law is an additional safeguard. To develop the procedures and mechanism of consultation with local and regional authorities, this is a very important point we wish to emphasize. Consultation in due time and form is a key issue for local democracy to function well. Take the necessary measures so that central government intervention in local decision-making is not excessive, and also to ensure that the new oversight office envisaged by the local plan does not aggravate the situation. To review the financial equalization mechanism in order to render it transparent and, this is very important, to ensure that the rules for this are established in consultation with the local authorities. To further develop the financial autonomy of local authorities by granting them the powers to levy taxes, we noted with satisfaction that proposal to transfer the revenues from the property tax to local authorities. To open the debate on further developing the regional tier of government with the aim of strengthening regional self-government. As a regional member of the Congress, this is something I feel deeply about. Regional council members have positive expectations from the development of this level of government, and these expectations should be addressed. To consider establishing a clear and specific legislative basis concerning the conditions of office of local elected representatives. This involves setting up rules for private employers to provide free time to elected officials so that they can carry out their duties in a satisfactory manner. Finally, to invite the government to consider signing the additional protocol on transfrontier cooperation and the additional protocol to the right to participate on the affairs of the local authority. Colleagues, this is an overview of the picture, and we saw it in Ireland. I ask you to adopt this recommendation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Merci, Madame. Je voudrais bien sûr féliciter nos deux rapporteurs qui ont bien exposé le problème et en profiter pour, à mon tour, remercier aussi notre ancien rapporteur, Michael Cohen, qui est donc ici en tant que visiteur, puisqu'il ne fait plus partie de notre congrès, mais il est ici. Merci beaucoup pour votre présence. Chers collègues, la discussion générale est ouverte. Je vous rappelle que la durée de vos interventions ne doit pas dépasser 3 minutes. Il y a 2 collègues inscrits, 2 collègues de notre Chambre des pouvoirs locaux, et ensuite nous ouvrirons le débat. La parole est à Anders Knappe pour 3 minutes, et ensuite Arthur Torres Pereira.
Mr. President, I have asked to put the question to the Minister from Ireland, so perhaps I should do that after the speak of the Minister. I put it on the list.
La parole est donc à Arthur Torres Pereira.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. This was a very interesting report to read for me. I did not know the real extent of the way Ireland's local government structure was historically and even today quite centralised. Now, your report says that the decentralization efforts failed for more than 40 years. Now there is a new reform agenda. What is your impression as regards both the government and the interlocutors you met on their attitudes towards change? Do you think the different stakeholders are ready and willing to move forward? In a word, are you, this time, optimistic on the feasibility of this reform? Thank you.
Merci. Avant de donner la parole à nos rapporteurs pour répondre à ces objets, y a-t-il d'autres collègues qui veulent prendre la parole? Non? Alors je vais vous demander, je vais vous dire que je fais une entorse. Je vais vous dire que je fais une petite entorse, mais vous allez tous la comprendre. Nous sommes ici en Chambre des pouvoirs locaux et ne peuvent s'exprimer que les gens qui appartiennent à la Chambre des pouvoirs locaux, mais il se trouve que le président de la délégation irlandaise ne siège pas à la Chambre des pouvoirs locaux, mais à la Chambre des régions. Mais vous comprenez bien qu'en tant que président de la délégation irlandaise, il a aussi des choses à dire. Je donne donc la parole à Michael O'Brien. Pour 3 minutes. À toi, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you'll do your best to ensure that I won't feel intimidated in lonelier circumstances with colleagues here in the local chamber. But it is really an unusual situation where, while there is an overall complete reorganisation of local government in Ireland, when it comes before colleagues here in Congress, some of us are not allowed to have a vote on the actual detail of the report. So that's why I really appreciate your efforts to ensure that there is a level playing field in terms of how this is presented here to colleagues in Congress. The first thing I want to do is to pay tribute to Madam Jenny Yildiz and to Michael Cohen and to our colleague from Latvia who has now stepped in to take over the job from Michael. And I would also like to pay tribute to the Secretariat in this, because this is not just a single monitoring report, Mr. Chairman. This is a double monitoring report. You will be aware that there was an initial monitoring process and that was appealed, so to speak, because of the changes that were taking place in Ireland at this time. And in that regard, the rapporteurs were obliged to go back to Ireland and to get a more complete, a more up-to-date situation of what's happening in Ireland, so that colleagues here in Strasbourg would be able to make their decisions with the best possible advice. And in that regard, and in response to the question a few moments ago from our colleague from Mr. Pereira, massive changes have taken place in Irish local government in the last 12 months. We have managed to amalgamate Limerick City and County. The country has amalgamated Waterford City and County. And we had two Tipperaries, Tipperary North and Tipperary South. They are now one Tipperary. Believe it or not, in a country of only 4.5 million people, we had 88, yes, 88 planning authorities. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Our country ran into awful difficulties, which were exacerbated by the economic situation because of the multitude of planning authorities in a small country. We now propose, or we have already almost completed, the reduction from 88 down to 31. So a lot has happened in the last year and a half, or since the present government came into power, to ensure that these changes are in hand and that they're taking place. Now, what we're about here today, of course, is all about the democratic aspect of what we're doing in Ireland. And I have the same concerns as everybody else has about the fact that there is too much central control in Ireland. And we are doing our best in the country to try to correct that with the cards that we can play with that are given to us by the government. What we're trying to do, Mr. Chairman, is we're trying to correct anomalies that have developed over 114 years of a British system of local government, in which we have 114 local authorities for a population of 4.5 million. Now, if you compare us with Scotland, which has a similar system to ours, like there's no point in us talking about France or Germany or Japan or whatever. We're talking about a system that we inherited from Britain and that is currently in operation in a country, a modern country like Scotland, with 5.2 million people. We have 4.5, and they have 32 local authority units. We propose to reduce our local authority units to 31. There's nothing wrong with that in terms of representation. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, is that in Northern Ireland, with a population of 1.8 million, they will have 11 local authorities as in from next year. So we are, if you like, at long last, synchronising ourselves with what happens in the countries all around us and in our own country in terms of Northern Ireland, and we're doing that in a way that meets with the approval of the association that I am the deputy leader of and have a mandate to speak here on their behalf today. So there is a lot happening in our country at the moment, and we are going to be very robust, ourselves and our sister organisation, the AMAI. We're going to be very robust in ensuring that the Irish government will respond to the needs of local government, will do all they can to enhance the role of local government in Ireland and regional government in Ireland, because it intends to change the regions, as the rapporteurs have outlined. And to do that, we need to move quickly. We need to move very quickly. There is a timescale, and the timescale is very tight. We need to have legislation amended in time for the local elections next May. So a lot of work has to be done in order to ensure that that happens. And anything at all that would hold up that process would be wrong, and it would be incorrect and wrong for the Congress to support anything that might do that. So I'd like to thank, Chairman, in conclusion, I'd like to thank the CLRE, I would like to thank the Congress for its investment in time and effort in Irish local government. And I thank everybody concerned, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, for the efforts that you've made to ensure that we have a system of subsidiarity in the country, where the banker in the high street has the same access to local government services, has the same access to local democracy as the shepherd up on the mountain. And that's what county local government system in Ireland is. It gives the same emphasis whether you're rural or whether you're urban or whether you're rural, in the fair and equal distribution of whatever resources are available to support local public services. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président de la délégation irlandaise. Je vous ai laissé un peu plus de temps que prévu, mais c'était important que nous ayons aussi votre avis de terrain. La liste des orateurs est maintenant épuisée. Je vais donner la parole à nos deux rapporteurs pour les commentaires qu'ils ont à faire. Qui commence en premier? Monsieur Joslenis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you from colleagues about interesting question and interpretation. Yes, I think there is consensus of the fact that change is necessary. More powers and more financial resources for local authorities are necessary. Less supervision from the central government is necessary. On all the issues, there is more or less an agreement. On the details of now it should be carried out, there is debate on perhaps the development interest, which is who the thing is very important for the government to go about this reform and transparency way, allowing participation. Yes, we are optimistic.
Merci. À votre tour, Madame Yegeni-Yildiz, des commentaires?
Oh, merci. My co-reporter said what I thought. Thank you.
Merci. Le président de la Commission, notre ami Lars Omolin, a-t-il quelque chose à déclarer?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we have a very good report here. I have read it carefully, and I think it's very balanced. I have also listened to different members from the Irish delegation and get their point of view. And I think we should be proud of this report with very good and practical recommendations for the government.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous allons donc maintenant procéder à l'examen du projet de recommandation contenu dans le document que je vous ai cité tout à l'heure et sur lequel 2 amendements ont été déposés. Nous commençons donc par l'examen de l'amendement numéro 1, déposé par Madame Egarty. Je lui donne la parole pour qu'elle défende cet amendement.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to thank the rapporteurs for their reports and thank them for coming to Ireland, and I'd also like to welcome our Minister and Ambassador here today, and also people from Westport Town Council and our representative from AMAI. My first amendment would read as follows. The abolition of town council would lead to public responsibilities being exercised further away from the citizen rather than closest as provided by Article 4 of the Charter, and there has not been sufficient and meaningful consultation on this issue. It's my first amendment.
Merci. Est-ce que quelqu'un veut parler contre cet amendement? Je n'en vois point. Les rapporteurs, quel est votre avis? Monsieur Jouslenis.
Буду говорить сейчас на русском языке. У меня общие комментарии по обоим предложениям. Скажу так, что вопрос очень чувствительный и нелегкий. Мы понимаем, что у всех самоуправлений и ассоциаций нет одинаковой позиции, как действует в этой ситуации. И это нормально, это очень серьезные изменения. Учитывая вышесказанное, наше предложение не менять рекомендации и не поддержать ни первое, ни второе предложение. Но мы приглашаем все ассоциации четко следить за процессом реформ. У нас сегодня прекрасная возможность. У нас присутствует министр. Господин министр, мы вас приглашаем в роли руководителя правительства взять на себя ответственность, что вы будете повлекать все стороны, которые участвуют в реформе, в процессе консультаций до принятия решений. Не после принятия решений, но до принятия решений. Это очень важно. Мы, как докладчики, берем на себя обязанность, что будем от Конгресса следить за этим процессом. Вы знаете, что процесс основывается на непрерывный политический диалог между правительством и самоуправлением. И Конгресс всегда будет готов и поможет вам и правительству, и самоуправлению в этом процессе.
Monsieur le rapporteur, puis-je vous demander votre avis? Est-il favorable ou défavorable à l'amendement?
Нет, мы не поддерживаем ни эту, ни следующую поправку.
Non, mais sur le premier, pour le moment.
Нет.
Vous ne le soutenez pas, donc avis défavorable. Même avis de Madame Jarini?
Yeah, yes, we are the same opinion with.
Donc avis défavorable.
Yes.
Quel est l'avis du président de la Commission?
Yes, I am also against the amendment.
Vous êtes également contre. Je vais donc mettre aux voix cet amendement numéro 1. Vous prenez vos boîtiers. Si vous êtes d'accord avec l'amendement, c'est oui, c'est la touche numéro 1. Si vous êtes contre cet amendement, c'est la touche numéro 2. Le scrutin est ouvert. Le scrutin est clos. Je demande l'affichage du résultat. 35 oui, 55 non, 8 abstentions. L'amendement n'est pas adopté. Nous passons maintenant à l'amendement numéro 2. Je donne à nouveau la parole à Madame Egarty pour qu'elle défende cet amendement. Vous avez la parole pour 1 minute, Madame.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm sorry the amendment wasn't carried, but I have a second amendment. And again, I would emphasise my feelings on the abolishment of town councils. Town councils have consistently stated that they oppose the abolition of town council. Its view that the abolition would weaken democracy at local level and weaken individual towns, the businesses in it as what is in time of significant economic challenges. There is no doubt that it will mean the access to representation from individuals and organisations will be lessened significantly. In the event that the proposals are proceeded with, the members are of the view that separate councils should continue to exist for existing town councils. My second amendment reads, to carry out further and meaningful consultation with the local communities, for example, by means of a referendum, prior to passing legislation resulting in the abolition of town councils. Thank you.
Merci, Madame. Les rapporteurs, tout à l'heure, vous avez dit que vous étiez contre pour les deux. Est-ce que vous confirmez ou pas?
Da, mi protiv obeh pravo.
Vous êtes contre cet amendement numéro 2 aussi. Madame Yegeni aussi, oui. Monsieur le Président de la Commission.
Yes, Mr. President, I agree with the rapporteurs.
Le Président de la Commission est contre aussi. Nous allons donc passer au vote. Avec votre boîtier toujours, bien sûr. Le scrutin est ouvert. Le scrutin est clos. Je demande l'affichage du résultat. 36 oui, 58 non, 6 abstentions. L'amendement numéro 2 n'est pas adopté, lui non plus. Nous allons donc passer maintenant au vote sur l'ensemble du projet de recommandation. Je vous rappelle que la majorité requise est celle des 2/3 des suffrages exprimés. Nous procédons de la même façon par vote électronique. Le scrutin est ouvert. On vote sur l'ensemble du texte. Le scrutin est clos. Je demande l'affichage du résultat. 82 pour, 14 contre, 6 abstentions. Le projet de recommandation est adopté. La majorité des 2/3 a été obtenue. Merci et je félicite bien sûr les rapporteurs pour leur travail. Mes chers collègues, c'est avec un grand plaisir que j'invite maintenant M. Fergus O'Dowd, ministre d'État au ministère des Communications, de l'Énergie et des Ressources naturelles, de l'Environnement et des collectivités territoriales, à prendre la parole. Monsieur le ministre, nous sommes particulièrement heureux de vous accueillir à la Chambre des pouvoirs locaux du Congrès, non seulement en votre qualité de ministre et d'ancien sénateur, mais aussi en tant qu'ancien maire. En effet, vous avez été le maire de la municipalité de Drogheda au long de 3 mandats consécutifs et votre expérience sur le terrain dans cette fonction élective fait que, bien évidemment, vous connaissez bien la situation des collectivités locales en Irlande. Vous venez d'assister aux discussions qui viennent de se tenir sur ce thème. C'est donc avec beaucoup d'intérêt que nous allons maintenant écouter votre point de vue et vos commentaires sur la situation actuelle de la démocratie locale dans votre pays. Monsieur le ministre, laissez-moi encore une fois vous remercier pour votre présence dans cette enceinte politique. Votre présence ici témoigne de votre intérêt pour les travaux du Congrès et de votre implication sur les questions de démocratie locale et d'application de la Charte dans votre pays. Je vous cède la parole, Monsieur le ministre.
Okay. Mr. President, members of Congress, Ambassador, public representatives in the gallery from Ireland, I'm delighted to be here today. I would particularly like to thank the rapporteurs for their incisive and very important assessment that they've made of local government in Ireland, and I want to assure them, Rapporteur Yildiz, Cohn, Jean Lennis, and if my pronunciation is bad, please forgive me, that we very much appreciate the analysis that you have given us and the depth and the strength of the views that you have expressed, and to affirm that the legislation is currently, in relation to local government reform, is currently before our Parliament. And obviously the views that you have expressed, and indeed the vote here today, signifies the views that you have, and I can assure you that government will take full and proper notice of all of those points. I am delighted, as I said, to be here, and I would like to thank you again for your report. While the report contains some understandable criticisms of our local government system, I am glad to be in a position to advise the Congress of the significant progress, of the optimism which you referred to for change in Ireland over the past 2 years. As we know, the system of local government on which the Congress Monitoring Committee is reporting must be viewed in the sense of the change that has taken place. Local government, as Councillor O'Brien has said, have remained largely unchanged for more than 100 years and are now seriously out of line with modern demographic and social realities. The role of local government is narrow. Some traditional functions have transferred to specialist agencies. This has been unavoidable because of requirements of scale, resources or expertise. The problem is they were not replaced up to now by appropriate alternative community-focused functions. During the past 20 years, new functions in the area of local and community development were located in bodies outside of local government, adding indeed to the marginalisation of local government. The fiscal powers of local authorities were weakened, particularly by the removal of the local property tax in the late 1970s, and past standards in local government were not always as high as they ought to have been. Due partly to these factors, public engagement with and confidence in local government was not high, and this in turn did in the past militate against widening its role. But we are now, as the rapporteurs acknowledge, implementing a major programme of reform, and this was announced by Minister Hogan and the Government's Action Programme for Effective Local Government recently. We are grateful to Congress for taking the trouble to arrange a follow-up visit last May, which gave Minister Hogan the opportunity to provide a full account of the proposed changes. Today's debate is very opportune. As I said initially, this legislation is now before our Parliament, and this will give statutory or legal effect to our reform programmes. I think Congress will welcome the publication of this legislation, and I know that when the delegation first visited Ireland, they did hear some sceptical comments about the prospects of reform as to whether it would actually be implemented, but this bill is actually doing that. Practical implementation measures are already underway on a number of fronts, and this will accelerate greatly during the coming year, and the bill itself we hope to have passed fully through our Dáil or our Parliament by the end of 2013. Of course, it will take longer to redress the effects of a century of neglect. As with every facet of public administration, we must tailor our system of local government in the context of our economic position and ensure that local government plays as full a role as possible in building on the momentum of recovery that is now clearly evident in our country. The Action Plan for Effective Local Government Reform underlines the position of local government as the main vehicle of governance and public service throughout our state. It sets out a clear vision for local government to lead economic, social and community development, to deliver effective and good value services, to represent citizens and local communities effectively and accountably. And it contains a commitment that in future public service functions at local level will be provided through local authorities and agencies, and that is really the core of the change that we're making sure that will happen. We are proposing new requirements whereby local government will have to be considered as the default mechanism for the delivery of all new local services in the future. Thus, the concern in the Congress about the share of public affairs managed by local government will be clearly addressed. The commitment to broaden the function of local government will be given tangible effect to a programme of decentralisation of functions, or devolution. The bill contains a provision for wider devolution of functions to local government from state bodies, as well as government departments. So these are some major enhancements to local authority functions, which will reverse, absolutely reverse, the tide of marginalisation of local government, especially in areas of local development. In addition, a number of specific functions are identified for devolution, and I refer particularly to local tourism, rural transport, administration and functioning of our ports, the management of state property, with the potential for further devolution of functions from other state bodies. So the potential in this legislation is for the future to have more and better functions referred back to and accountable to local government. The shortcomings in our local government system have built up over a long time, and they can't be, like a ship, they can't be turned around instantly. Experience internationally shows that major administrative changes must be well planned and carefully implemented. We have also experienced in Ireland of the ill effects of previously poorly planned and rash implementation, such as the reform of our HSE. In contrast, the action programme and the new legislation sets out realistic, measured and progressive pathways for more far-reaching change. One of the key points is fiscal powers. The importance of fiscal independence to local government is highlighted in your report, and in this context, the power that has been conferred on elected councils is a fundamentally new and important departure. This is essential to renewing the relationship between local government and the citizens. It introduces a real opportunity for meaningful local government, as citizens will be directly investing in their communities, and councils will be much more accountable for the spending and tax decisions that they will make. I think this is the fundamental reform we are making, that every elected councillor will be involved in what the charge is going to be on the local households in his community, and he or she will have to stand up and defend their actions and their policies in a truly accountable democratic fashion. That is a really fundamental change, which is absolutely essential for good democracy and good government. And being accountable, that is the essence of local government. So we will no longer be able to say that we should be doing this programme or that programme or the other programme. You will be asked as a councillor, well, why didn't you do this? What are you spending money on that for? And I suppose you can't hide behind the officials, as sometimes we do. You'll have to be accountable yourself. And that really is true in absolute democracy. The issue of subsidiarity is a key principle of the Charter. The measures we are taking to devolve functions from central to local government, I believe, will strengthen this principle in local government. But I just want to say that I take account of the comments that the rapporteurs have made in this regard, and I will bring them to the attention of the government and for debate. Within the new arrangements, municipal districts will cover the entire territory of each county. So at the moment you might have major sections of a population who do not have a local council other than the county council. So now everybody, as Councillor O'Brien says, whether they're living, whether in the bank or in the house or wherever, or they're the shepherd on the mountain, and we don't have too many of those, I think, anymore, but they all have a say, they're all a part, they're all included. Elected members will have a wide range of powers, fully devolved to district level, with nearly 70 reserved functions. So there will be 70 new reserved functions that local councils will have that they did not have before. And they will have a statutory power as well at municipal district, at county level. They will in a real way be working for their communities. I'm just conscious of my time, President. I'll probably answer the questions shortly. One of the Irish Government's objectives in this reform programme is to strengthen the leadership and oversight of the elected councils. To that end, we are reforming the governance arrangements within the system, both in relation to elected councils and the executive. At national level, we have committed to establishing a National Oversight and Audit Commission, not as an instrument of control, but to ensure that local authority performance is monitored and assessed in a meaningful and objective way. It will provide independent scrutiny of local government performance in fulfilling national, regional and local mandates, bringing accountability and coherence to the forefront of our system. The Commission will provide enhanced oversight of local government to ensure that citizens and communities can compare the performance of their council with others. I think that's a very important issue as well. We will provide for elected councils to have greater oversight in the role and delivery of the policy by the executive and rebalance the power from the executives in favour of elected democratic representatives. In conclusion, the debate here this morning is very, very welcome indeed. We need a strong local government system that represents its citizens and communities effectively, that provides the services that people need and does so in a financially responsible way. Our reforms are essential to achieving this. The new legislation changes the relationship fundamentally between citizens and local authority and establishes the framework for local government that is necessary for 21st century communities. Our Constitution recognises the role of local government in providing a forum for the democratic representation of local communities. And I am thankful to be part of a government that has upheld the value of our Constitution and the place of local government. I see the Congress report as providing additionally underpinning to the reform agenda, and I look forward to the continued support of the Congress in this regard. And finally, just before I answer the questions, I just want to assure everybody that I've been in local government. I was a councillor for over 27 years. So the bread and butter of politics is local government, representing people. And having the power, particularly in terms of finance, will really enhance that role and make all councillors, they'll have more power, but they'll also be more accountable. In relation to the questions from Anders Nappe, and I pronounced these words, just apologies. The question was, your country is in the initial stage of a large-scale local government reform, etc. And the reply, as I mentioned in my address, today's debate is a very opportune moment for the Irish government because we have made some significant advances. Sorry. Oh, he has to ask me. Is it, yeah? I'm sorry.
Vous pouvez rester ici pour y répondre, ou bien vous pouvez aller vous asseoir à votre place.
Sorry. You have the... Apologies. Oh, sorry, yeah. Excuse me. I have to listen to the questions. Yeah, sorry. Merci.
Monsieur le ministre, pour la réponse aux questions, qui vont vous être posées, vous pouvez rester au pupitre ou bien vous pouvez aller à votre place, comme vous le souhaitez. Mais chacun des membres qui va poser les questions vont vous les poser maintenant. Moi, je voudrais vous remercier pour l'intervention longue mais très intéressante que vous avez faite, Monsieur le ministre, dans lequel vous avez justement aussi rappelé ce principe de subsidiarité qui était un principe initié dans la Charte européenne de l'autonomie locale et qu'ensuite tout le continent européen a repris, ce dont nous sommes très fiers. Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Vous aviez fini votre intervention, on peut passer aux questions. Alors, la première question est la question de notre collègue Anders Knappe, à qui je passe la parole tout de suite.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Minister, for a very interesting contribution. My question is, your country is in the initial stage of large-scale local government reform, as we have discussed today. We, as members of the Congress, are ready to be a part of this difficult but exciting exercise. And as you know, Mr. Minister, we have post-monitoring producers for cooperation with Member States. Given the context of your action programme and Congress recommendations, do you see a role for the Congress in this collaboration? Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. Absolutely. As I said in my address, today's debate is very opportune as the Irish Government have made some significant advances in the implementation of the reform programme of late. Specifically, we have just published the Local Government Bill, which will give legal effect to many of the most important reforms. I am particularly grateful to the Swedish delegation for raising the question of a possible collaborative role for Congress as we roll out our reform programme. I think we would be very positively disposed to such cooperation, particularly as I have emphasised, the reform programme is an ongoing process rather than a once-off event, and that some of its main potential benefits will be seen in the long run. So we would very much welcome your contribution as a Congress in relation to that development. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. La deuxième question est posée par Madame Marie Egarty pour 1 minute. Vous avez la parole.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Thank you, Minister O'Dowd, for coming today, and thank you for your presentation. My question, Minister, is we believe that a structure and permanent dialogue and consultation between local authorities and central government is necessary for local democracy. We as councillors in Ireland are concerned that the government choose to abolish town councils and replace them by a structure that has no financial autonomy. Minister, we feel there has not been sufficient consultation on this issue. We think that the decision should be postponed to allow for time for consultation. What is your opinion? Thank you.
À vous, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, President. Councillor Hegarty, I'd like to thank you very much for your question and the issues that you raise here. The Irish delegation has raised a question of a structured dialogue and consultation between local authorities and central government. This is something that I am very happy indeed to respond positively to. My department engages closely with local authority members, and as I think the number of times Minister Hogan has met with the different associations has been 16 in all over the last 2.5 years, and that's the way it should be. In addition, the recently published local government bill provides for a legal requirement on the Minister to meet local authority representatives. From the perspective of elected members, the Reform Action Programme proposes strengthening the arrangements for representation of local authority members, and this is being pursued currently to, I understand, discussions with both local authority members' organisations. So they are very much a part and involved in everything that we are doing. The Irish delegation has also questioned the degree of financial autonomy. The bill sets out the broad framework of financial arrangements between district and county level. In terms of changes to the current system, this involves integration of the rating function at a county level, thereby eliminating the current fragmentation of fiscal responsibility. However, and most importantly, the new system provides for the significant involvement of members at district level, including input into the budgetary process, discretion to fix the level of various charges and decisions on programmes of work within your district. Much further detail will be provided in regulations and guidelines to be issued in due course, and we will of course be happy to consider all the views of local authority members in that regard. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. La troisième question est posée par Monsieur Zdeněk Broz pour 1 minute, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, Minister, the question of regional development is an ongoing debate here at the Congress, and we rely on the reference framework on regional democracy as a benchmark for assessing democracy at regional level. We understand that in Ireland the role of the regions seems quite limited at the moment, but the government shows signs of wanting to develop this tier of government. Minister, how do you see the future of regions in Ireland? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karl-Heinz. On the question of the role of the regions, which was raised by the Belgian delegation, the reality is that unlike many European states, including Belgium, there is very little regional identity in Ireland, and the current arrangements of 2 parallel sets of regional bodies is not sustainable in the context of public service reform. But in future, we will have a single consolidated set of regional assemblies which will perform very important functions, particularly in the management of EU investment programmes, formulation and monitoring of enhanced regional spatial strategy and economic strategies which link implementation of the national spatial strategy to local development plans and generally forming a bridge between central and local government. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Si j'ai bien compris, je crois que Monsieur O'Brien veut poser une question encore de nouveau pour 1 minute.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question, it was remiss of me, unfortunately, as the leader of the Irish delegation, not to formally welcome Minister O'Dowd and to say that, unfortunately, we haven't had very many visits from ministers from Ireland to the Congress, in my experience, going back over the last 20 years. So it's really a welcome sign that you've now come and shown, on behalf of the government, an interest in what we do out here in Strasbourg. And you have seen yourself this morning that with my colleagues Mary Hegarty, with Phil Ryan Bugler and with Jan Rott and myself and with a colleague of yours, Bill Carey, who is an institution out here in Strasbourg, I have to say that you can bring back to your government the message that we are joining with the two associations in Ireland are merging, and we've had very fruitful discussions in that regard, in the interests of the entire public in Ireland that demand good local government. You can rest assured that those of us who are out here in Strasbourg will be challenging your government to ensure that all of the promises you make and you've discussed and that you have outlined today, we will pursue them to the very end in the interests of the country that we serve. Thank you very much. I now have to leave and go look after Ireland's interests in the other chamber, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Monsieur le Ministre, vous avez une réponse à faire à Monsieur O'Brien? No?
Just I say thank you very much, Michael. I look forward to being accountable, like yourself. Thank you.
Merci. La dernière question pour le président de notre commission de suivi, notre ami Lars Omolin.
Minister, I would like to thank you very much on behalf of the Monitoring Committee for your presence here and for your very interesting intervention. Minister, can we make an appointment for, let's say in 1 or 2 years' time, you can have an appointment with the rapporteurs to pursue the political dialogue and ensure that the recommendations can be implemented in the near future.
Yes. Mr. President, I look forward to that very, very much, and I think that's at the heart of democracy, that the rapporteurs and this Congress, that the views that you sincerely hold and the wise wisdom, the broad wisdom of your knowledge of local government right across Europe and beyond is very, very important to us in Ireland as we develop. And absolutely, we very much welcome your visits and look forward to that appointment sooner rather than later. Thank you. Okay. That's it, Chair.
Monsieur le Ministre, je vous remercie beaucoup d'avoir répondu aux questions des membres de la Chambre des pouvoirs locaux. Permettez-moi de rajouter avec un commentaire, même si vous n'avez plus l'oreillette. Vous avez fait ceci avec talent, avec passion, avec compétence, et je voudrais dire aussi avec ouverture au dialogue, et c'est important dans notre Assemblée. Merci.